So I'm a therapist. I practice in Los Angeles as a somatic sex therapist. So what that essentially means is I incorporate a lot of the body when we're talking about mental health. A lot of times we might think that mental health just starts up here. We're really focused about what our thoughts are, what our actions are, what we should be nervous about. And I think that in that way, we kind of neglect this really wonderful resource, which is the rest of our body. So we don't pay attention to what's happening in our gut, what's happening in our chest, what's happening with our breathing. So when I'm looking at mental health, I think that it's really important to incorporate all of those juicy information points. I think that it's data and I think it's really helpful. So what that looks like, especially as a sex therapist, is looking at where different emotions might be stored in the body. So if we're talking about something really challenging, we're talking about maybe like a trauma or something that makes you really anxious, I'm also taking an inventory of what's going on in your body. What that looks like would be like maybe you're shifting around, maybe you're going like this with your neck. And so I like to point those things out, not as a way to judge or put you on the spot, but I think that we do these things and we think that they're like more subconscious, but in actuality, they're related to what we're experiencing. So maybe if you're shifting around, you're feeling uncomfortable or that feels soothing to you. Maybe if you're touching the back of your neck, there's some aches or something going on there. And so I really like to have this more full total body person approach to mental health and mental awareness. And I think that what that can really offer folks is like the opportunity to connect with themselves on a more holistic level. When I think of holistic, I think of not only the mind, not only the body, but also your community. What does your social support and social network look like? Where are your resources? Even, what are your friendships looking like? And I think that when we look at mental health, not as a vacuum, as an individual problem or something to be fixed, we can look at the whole system. We can look at everything that you go through, everything that affects you. And the goal is to get you some healing that way. So I think that that's really what I enjoy about it. And how this also comes up is especially working with people who experience chronic pain. So I work with a lot of folks who maybe have like vaginismus or pelvic floor pain. And so we do something that is kind of different because I think that a lot of maybe pelvic floor specialists talk about using dilators or ways to kind of widen your pelvic floor, vaginal opening. But what I'm looking at is like where you feel tension, stress, where you're hard on yourself, where you put pressure on yourself, where you're really, really self-critical, and how that actually affects how you're relating to your body. So trauma and everything is like really stored in the body. It's bottom up. So I kind of experience it as like emotions are bottom up, which means that like they're more coming from your gut, from your belly, from your diaphragm, and feelings are top down. So they're more in your head, like saying I'm sad rather than feeling like you're getting choked up or feeling like there's pressure in your chest. So something that I like to do is to lead folks through a more somatic experience. And so that can look like grounding, really like sinking into your body, taking inventory of what your sensations are going on in your body. And I think that I find that to be really helpful. So I'll give you an example. If you're sitting down and you feel really fidgety, you feel really uncomfortable, I might invite you to close your eyes, to place your feet on the ground, to wiggle your toes, and to like sink into your body. So if you're listening, you can kind of do that now. Maybe you're holding some tension in your shoulders and your shoulders are hunched up. Relax your shoulders. If your jaw is clenched, just relax your jaw. And in this moment, just kind of take a quick inventory, glance all over your body. Where are you feeling something pop up? Maybe it's like a tickling in your gut. Maybe your toes are itching. Maybe your shoulders hurt. You're just going to kind of pay attention to what's happening without judgment. Sometimes when we experience something somatically, we want to judge it. We want to say, this sucks. This is uncomfortable. I hate this. But we're just kind of paying attention to it without having to change or alter anything. And so that's what you're going to do in this moment. And that's what I would do in a therapy session. Ask folks what's coming up for them if we're talking about something difficult and the words don't seem to be coming, because the words don't always have to give us this really intense vocabulary for what's happening. The body has a vocabulary of its own. So maybe you kind of just notice where you're feeling any tension or tingling or heat, and really breathe through it. Send breath to all the different parts of your body and know what that feels like. I think that also just helps people to feel grounded in the moment. Even in therapy, we find ourselves focusing on what's next, what we have to do, where our demands of our social life are. And we spend a lot of time in our heads. We spend a lot of time disconnected from our bodies, staying away from it, especially if there's trauma, because we don't want to spend time with that part of our body that doesn't feel good or that sensation that feels familiar. Maybe you're familiar with like fight or flight. Maybe you've heard of something like that. So fight or flight is essentially our nervous system just ramping right up. And we love fight or flight. We love for our nervous system to experience that sometimes when it's called for. If there's somebody chasing us, if there's a threat, if we're about to present at an online conversation, we want it to show up for us. But what happens is if you're experiencing trauma for a prolonged amount of time, your nervous system gets stuck in that fight or flight. So it's constantly thinking that you are at risk or there's a threat when there really isn't. And what that can do is dysregulate your body, dysregulate your emotions, and lead to some chronic pain. So if we circle back to folks who experience maybe painful intercourse, vaginismus, pelvic floor pain, a lot of times there would have been some type of experience that has your nervous system in hyperdrive all the time. And the goal with a holistic approach to wellness is to kind of disrupt that, to cultivate a sense of safety so that you feel at home in your body. When you feel at home in your body, you're more likely to experience pleasure, experience joy, feel safer in your surroundings. So that feels really important when I'm working with clients who have those type of presenting issues, because we want our bodies to be able to tell us when there's something wrong, but we also want our bodies to experience pleasure when it's existing for us. On the other side, there's the freeze side of our nervous system, which is when you feel like numbed out, you feel dissociated, you feel like you really don't care about anything. And similarly to regulating your nervous system and bringing it down, you can also bring it up. And you can do that by incorporating the different senses. You can do this at any time during the day. So if you're taking a shower, you might notice that you're just like taking a shower and you're thinking about all the things that you have to do. You wash your hands, you're not present, you're not thinking about it. We do these things on autopilot. So that makes a lot of sense. But if you kind of bring in the different sensations, you might notice the temperature of the water as it hits your back. You might notice what the smells of the soap or the shampoo are like. You might notice what the sponge feels like on your skin. And when you're asking yourself those questions, kind of like throughout the day, you're having a more mindful experience of yourself. So you're not just getting up, doing your thing and driving to work or doing whatever without paying attention to yourself. You're constantly checking in. So you can do that when you're doing anything. And if you do it in a more intentional way, maybe you like go on a walk and you have like a mindful walk where you're noticing like what it feels like to plant your heel, then the ball of your foot, then your toes. You're noticing what the air feels like, what smells you're noticing, what the different colors in the trees are looking like. And that's having like a more integrated awareness of what you're doing rather than feeling like you're completely away from yourself. So when you're feeling like that numbed out, I don't care, whatever, even if it's something as simple as like lighting a candle or incense or something like that, and really paying attention to where those smells are hitting, what it looks like to pay attention to the candle, it helps your body like come back up into a state of regulation where you feel like, oh, like I'm here, I'm in my room, I'm in my home, my partner's next to me. And it feels like there's an opportunity to cultivate more safety in that way. So that's what I feel like is really important in somatic therapy, in holistic therapy. And I think that that also really affects how we're interacting with our community. When we're not feeling safe, then we feel like either really shut off from people or that we don't want to interact with them at all. And so I really encourage like these ways as ways to acknowledge what the community can offer you, what your friendships and what your supports can offer you. So tapping into that on a community level feels really important to me as well. I think also another part of working with holistic mental health is looking at identity. So for me, it feels really important to acknowledge who my clients are, like who they are, maybe racially, ethnically, what class experiences they have, what religious experience or able experiences they have, sexuality, gender, all of these identities, we kind of just like check boxes sometimes, but we don't realize how deeply they affect us and how deeply they affect our healing and how we relate to the world. You know, if you have a marginalized identity, things might not feel as safe for you as for other folks. And so tapping into that in an intentional way that says like you might not feel safe in every situation. It might not just be a given for you. So how do you bring in things that can support you in day-to-day experiences? How do we talk about it in a therapeutic sense? Well, I ask questions like, what is it like for you to be a Black woman, for example? What is it like for you to be a queer person? Like, what is your experience? Because even if I work with tons and tons of different people who have similar experiences or similar identities, they're not going to be the same. So asking what the world is like for you feels really important to tap into like the whole person. So not just what your emotions are, not just what your feelings are, not just what your traumas are, but like who you experience yourself to be, validating that, normalizing that, and encouraging you to talk about that from a mental health perspective. Because therapy, we can't talk about therapy without talking about the political identities that you might have. We can't talk about therapy with talking about generational trauma. We can't talk about it without talking about what homophobia is like, what racism is like. We can't really look at your mental health in total if we don't want to talk about those things. So I think it feels really important for me to bring that in and to encourage people to talk about it in a safe and non-judgmental space where whatever your answer is gets to be okay. And that's my favorite part of therapy is like, however you're coming in, it's okay. It gets to be validated. And for me, that's like the best part of mental health and cultivating a holistic understanding of you as a person. So then you can take those skills and apply them in different parts of your life. You know, you can then go and feel like more supported in who you are. You don't have to feel like you are, crazy or like the only one. My goal is to normalize and to validate your experience so that you have a place that feels safe and you're recognizing what safety feels like. You're recognizing it in your body. You're recognizing what makes you feel good in your body. You're recognizing what makes you feel good when you interact with people, what people feel safe, what situations feel safe, what situations don't. And I think another really important part is setting boundaries. Think we have this understanding of boundaries as like gates or, iron doors that keep people out and keep people away and keep us to ourselves. But boundaries actually really are helpful in that they help people get closer to us. So if I'm setting a boundary and I'm saying, no, I don't feel like going out tonight or something like that, not only am I protecting what my needs are in that moment, maybe I'm tired, maybe, I've had a rough week. And so I get to stay home and recharge, but I'm also protecting other people from like me coming in with an energy that doesn't feel good. And then I'm complaining the whole time, or I'm not really into it. So that's like a small boundary that you can set. But a lot of people struggle with boundaries. People feel like they have to people please to say yes to everything. I feel so bad. And we put all of this internal dialogue on ourselves, and it's really heavy. So setting boundaries can free you of that. When you set boundaries, also, you're allowing other people to see what that's like. You're allowing other people to be like, oh, like I can do that too. I can say no. I can advocate for my own needs. So you model that for them. And then you and your community also get the benefits of the boundary. So you actually let people feel closer to you, not further away, because you're advocating for yourself and for your needs. And then they get to respect them. then they don't have to notice when you're pulling away or when you're not interested, and kind of make up the stories and have their anxious brains take hold of them. They can understand, like, oh, like she doesn't like to do that. They don't like to do this. And that's fine. When you respect a boundary, you're also increasing your safety. And I've said safety about 1 billion times in this talk, but it's because it's so important. It's so important to just how we experience the world and how we can have really regulated sense of mental and emotional wellness. And so I think that doing that through boundary setting is really important. And it's hard. It's hard because people who are used to bulldozing your boundaries, who are used to you saying yes to everything, who are used to taking advantage of you, they don't like it when you set a boundary, even if it's a gentle one. But when I work with clients, I talk about how to prepare yourself for that, for them being combative against your boundary, and the importance of holding firm to it. And it's not being rigid. It's not meaning that like you can't ever change your mind, but it is about understanding where your limitations are and validating them, because you're a human being and you get to say no, you get to ask for more, you get to have a reach to get your needs met. And so that's really important and can be really fulfilling about setting boundaries. And we also get into our heads a lot. So we kind of think about all of the ways that somebody is going to be mad at us or not love us anymore or break up with us if we set the boundary. And when we do that, we kind of say no to ourselves in favor of saying yes to somebody else. When you do that, you're invalidating your own experience in favor of theirs. That also doesn't feel very good long term. It's not super sustainable. So setting gentle boundaries along the way is a really great way to make sure that your bids for attention are met, that your needs are met, and that the other person can do the same. So I feel like I've covered a lot of different things, but I feel like those are the most important, especially talking about somatic and holistic therapy, talking about boundaries and talking about getting your needs met. So if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. And if you have any questions about mental health, if you have any questions about what it means to be a sex therapist and a sex positive therapist, I'm here for them. Thank you.
Kamil, thank you so much for your presentation. You were lovely and obviously extremely knowledgeable. I love how you broke it down so simply for us in certain themes that kept reappearing in your presentation. I'm going to go back to actually a question that came up after the last presentation, but I think that you're more than qualified to field it. This person writes, "Hi, I have a question. Will learning psychology help me know myself more and help me to recover from depression? I've tried therapy a few times with a psychologist, but I didn't prefer it. Is self-therapy possible?"
I like that question a lot. And I think that I will say yes and no. First, studying psychology is absolutely a great way to get to know yourself a little bit more. It's also a great way to get to know kind of like these theoretical approaches to mental health and different diagnostic features. But I kind of discourage folks from self-diagnosing. And the reason for that being is like, have you ever gone onto like WebMD and typed in like, my stomach hurts, and they are coming up with the worst possible answers? Sometimes you can do that. I remember when I was getting my graduate school degree and I was reading the different diagnoses and I was like, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. So and I think that that can come in a little bit, but then you mitigate it a little bit and you have an understanding of like, there are certain criteria to meet mental health diagnoses. And so I think that studying it can absolutely allow you to get to know a little bit more of what those are and also maybe what treatments there are. And also that like going to therapy or going to a psychologist aren't the only ways to target your mental health. I think it's one of my favorite ways, but if it doesn't work for you, I think also asking, what about that particular psychologist didn't work for you? Maybe you want somebody who's more casual and conversational. Maybe you want somebody with, you know, a doctoral degree or, you know, a psychiatrist for some medication. But you really get to be in the driver's seat of your mental health. And I tell people all the time, like, if I'm not the best fit for you, that's okay. I want you to get what you need. And so you get to ask the questions, you get to, you know, get what you need from it, and maybe you'll find somebody else who's a better fit. So short answer, I think studying psychology is a fantastic way to get a better understanding of who you are and who other folks in your life are. And long answer, therapy can be helpful if you're finding the right therapist, but also taking care of your health in other ways, noticing what feels good when you're like maybe working out or moving, or if you like a yoga practice or a mindfulness practice, or spending more time with friends, reading books, like all of these things can target mental health. It doesn't have to be kind of like a talk therapy type of situation.
Excellent answer. I've got a few questions myself as well for you, Kamil, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of them is, how often do you incorporate meditation into your weekly wellness routine? And for anyone looking to get started with it, where would you recommend they begin?
I feel like I incorporate meditation in very slight ways. And then I also do more like longer, fuller meditations. But for me, like a meditation um, can look so differently. I think that when we think of it, we're like sitting like this and we're just like in hours and hours on end. But actually, like a meditation could be simply like when I get up in the morning, before I even like swing my legs out of bed, I just like sit and I put my hand in my heart and a hand on my belly, and I like have 3 deep breaths, and I'm just like,
feels good right now, even kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And I just like allow myself to like feel that groundedness, maybe set an intention for the day. Nothing super major. So I don't like when meditation and like wellness feel like really inaccessible. And so knowing that you can do that during the day, you can do that while you're driving, I'll like sometimes just like lay on the ground like a starfish. That's my favorite type of thing. Even if I just have 10 minutes to just like feel myself and feel my body and the earth. So yeah, I think that's it all the time.
You also talked about the importance of identifying your community and the resources available to you within it. What would you say to anyone who hesitates to share information or struggles surrounding sexual health, for example, which is obviously a bit of a sensitive subject for some people to bring up to friends or other family members?
Yeah, I think that we experience so much shame. We experience so much shame around sex and sexuality. And it's constructed like that, unfortunately. And so feeling nervousness or feeling like you don't really want to share with other people is perfectly understandable. My suggestion would be to find like that one person. So when we're talking about community, it doesn't have to be everybody in your social circle that meets that need. Maybe there's one person that you heard say one thing one time that you connected with. And really, I think we all want to feel connected and heard. That's like the most human imperative. So when we feel like we can just like be seen, see other people and talk to them is really valuable. So you approaching them and being like, maybe that one time that you said that thing, it really resonated with me. Like, can we talk a little bit more about that? I think like also prefacing what you want to talk about before. We also think we just got to like jump in. And sometimes it's okay to be like, hey, I want to talk to you about something that I'm going through or that's on my mind. Like, do you have the space to hear me? Do you have the space to listen to me? People get to say yes, they get to say no. But either way, then you're walking into an environment that feels supportive. And like, trust yourself in your gut.
That's a great tip, what you said there about the cues. So often in our life, there are cues that we ignore. And sometimes if we recognize those, when someone says something that could lead into support for yourself. And it just takes a matter of understanding and recognizing that opportunity and then approaching that person, like you said, and it might just be one or two. So thank you for your insights on that. How would you suggest someone approach mental health with a spouse who is fairly closed off on the subject? For example, you come home and you're in the mood to talk about how you're feeling and how you've had a bad day and stuff. And maybe you've got someone who isn't used to talking about their feelings as a spouse and would rather sit there and, they're looking at their phone while you're talking to them. And it's not an engaging experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it can originally feel kind of painful and like isolating, but I think that I would recommend like acknowledging that that's a need of yours first and foremost. And I like to do that and have like these type of conversations when it doesn't feel like super high stakes. So when you're both in like a decent mood, you both have eaten, because that's when I'm getting cranky if I haven't. Whenever you're feeling really good and being like, hey, like, I really want to talk to you more about like what goes on for me emotionally or what I've been going through lately. Like, is that something that you feel like you'd be open to hearing? And they're really distracted and they're not into it. You're not going to get your needs met. It's going to maybe start a fight or an argument. So I think like setting the stage to have whatever support you need is absolutely encouraged, and acknowledging like what their process might be and asking them, do you ever feel like you want to talk to me about those types of things?
Mhm.
How do you feel like you process those types of things? Do you talk to your friends? Do you talk to your mom? And asking them what their process is, because some people really do have an internal like situation. They just want to talk to themselves, process themselves. Letting them know that it's safe for them to talk to you makes it so that they're probably more likely to let you talk to them.
Mhm.
So I think it's just kind of like that modeling and making everything feel known, and know that like this is an absolutely understandable need, and
Yeah.
you get to have that.
That's a fantastic tip. And like you said, I guess a lot of it does come down to timing, and you should time those conversations accordingly so that you hit people when they are going to be most attentive and accepting of that subject. Well, Kamil, how can people get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me at KamilLewis.com, KamilLewis.com, and Instagram at kamil.lewis. And you can contact me through email and stuff like that in both platforms.
Thank you so much for your presentation today, Kamil. We hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference, of course, and we look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
Thank you so much.